Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here with us. I hope this is clear. Yeah, it looks like it is. So I'm actually really excited for every free school that we do together, but particularly this one. And I just wanted to say before I start, one of the wonderful things about the PAC FemCop or Pacific Feminist Community of Practice is we get a chance every time we do these free schools to have a closed session just with the members of the network. And we also have a few days later, I think this time it's next Monday, not Friday. We usually have it on a Friday, but we have a closed strategizing session as well after every free school. So there's two parts actually to every free school. But I wanted to add that if you go to our Diva Facebook page, we have a new one called divafiji.org. And basically every single video, every resource that we've produced as part of PAC FemCop will be available there for you. So thanks to Only Ideas Studios, who've been working with us through the last 18 months. We're making sure that it doesn't just stay with us at Diva or the members of the network of PAC FemCop, but that really any feminist organizing, any human rights organizing by civil society throughout the Pacific have places they can go. So that's a good note for us to start on. The second thing I wanted to say is every single free school that we do, as you know, we have a recap session, and it's because what we know from epistemology work on the way that we form ideas and that we form frameworks of meaning is that if you keep layering that over time, if you keep doing that over time and then adding new bits of information and knowledge to it, then it's much more likely to be embedded. And we also find that that means that people find a way of connecting it to their own body of knowledge. So don't be surprised that some of the first slides that you see on every single one of the videos are familiar to you. They should be, and they should become more and more familiar with you over time. So on that note, we are talking about effective campaigning from local to global, but we're going to start just by reminding ourselves about some of the key slides that we've together been able to do over the past 18 months. So the first slide is really just to say feminism, we're very clear, is a system of oppression, actually, that patriarchy is a system of oppression that really finds its way into every part of our lives. And feminism is about lifting those out and looking at them and then working on them from the roots. Because what we're trying to do for the future is find a world, define a world, create a world where there's a lot more equity and a lack of injustice. So those are the things that we're struggling for, is what we call liberation on all territories or freedom on all territories. So and a balance in the way that we hold our social, economic, ecological, and climate justice. So that's feminism for you. The next thing is, the next thing is that in order to do this work and to kind of look at the world in a new way, it takes time, and there will be worries, and there will be fear, and there will be a loss of some of the power of those who really felt like they were powerful before. And anytime you have change, we know as humans, there's conflict and there's things that we have to do to retrain our eyes and to look at the world in new ways. So let's remember that from our time together. The third thing I would say, and Gail, just let me know if I'm going too fast. The third thing is that we try to really make sure that we locate and we contextually frame this work here in Pacific small island states. We have different ways of talking about ourselves as Pacific peoples, and all of them are valid. And they, for instance, now a lot of us talk about Pacific large ocean states instead of small island states. Both realities are true. We cover a quarter of the Earth's surface. And as you know, we all have a decolonization process, an anti-imperial process that is still happening throughout the Pacific, just as it is throughout the world. And there are those such as West Papua and many others who are still in very direct struggles for their lives and resistance and freedom struggles. So we're with them in solidarity. I'll just skip over that slide. And just to say another thing that we're very, very conscious about is this idea that we build from below. Diva's always interested in making sure that we're not coming in with any top-down approaches. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about effective campaigning today. So just keep this in, you know, as one of your takeaways, because all of us are touched by patriarchy, just as we're touched by freedom struggles, you know, that people have been and doing and working on for generations. And it can be painful when we're trying to wash off that patriarchy every day, is to try and find new ways to be in the world that don't harm ourselves and other people. It's not easy to do this work. So we have to be, we always say as feminists, we have to be gentle so that we can be dangerous together, careful with each other so we can be dangerous together. No matter what work we're doing, we have to keep in mind that in the Pacific, 3/4, 2 out of 3 women, so even more, 2 out of 3 women have experienced gender-based violence. So that's one reality. And that means that we're not just interested in the cycles of violence, that's important in looking at the cycles of violence, but we're really also interested in this wheel of power and control. What are the ways that people coerce each other, keep control of each other? And generally we find that because we're in a patriarchal system, that it, in the vast majority, it is about men who are acting in coercive and oppressive ways with women. But the issue is that patriarchy harms everybody. It harms men as well. So some of the gentle qualities, some of those other qualities that men might want to explore, they find it hard to do as well, because they're also normed into certain kinds of behavior, just as women are. And we completely ignore, for instance, gender non-binary people as well. So there's lots of consequences of this very old system. Another consequence is that we have so much inequality in our societies now. We have those who have a lot of help and support and a knowledge of the state and the government and how it works. And then we have those like in these pictures who are living from day to day. This is just in one of our informal settlements in Fiji, where we don't even have tap access to a house, and where there are basically buckets of water. And you can imagine all of the other issues around water and sanitation, about food security and medical issues and all kinds of things that are a problem. So always keep in mind about what we call class and the economy and poverty to power. How do we change issues of poverty into empowerment? And part of that is kind of working out what are the everyday material sets of change. So if you're doing campaigning work, are your campaigns aimed somewhere up there at the structural and people can't relate to them? Or do they have elements of both the material, everyday realities of us in these bodies, as well as the long-term struggles for change to our systems? They have to be both, we think, in order for them to have reality in people's lives. The next thing is that we have to think about those who are in and out of our state, of the reach of our state. So we always say, if someone is in Ngau or Rambi or Kandavu or any of these places, and then not being included in the reach of the state, how far the state services go, then we have to think very carefully. And that includes us as civil society and social movements. Praxis, I think we've already gone through, which is saying act, reflect, act again. As we always say, that's a revolutionary act, because it means that no one can tell you, because you don't stop. You keep learning all the way through your life. So it means that even if you weren't very good at something, I had a funny situation yesterday where I'd never used Twitter Spaces before, and I had to use it for a campaign. And it ended up that it ended up that it went offline and I had to start all over again. So there were all these people waiting for me to get this Twitter space started. But the reality is the next time that I use Twitter spaces, I'll be, better at it, hopefully. And we keep learning every time we do it. So if I had stopped myself and been embarrassed or taken all that inside, then you don't really keep going on and progressing. And so I'm always open at 54 years old to being a newbie and not being able to do something. We just keep learning. It's a lifetime learning. As Viva always says, it's about whether you have a spirit of learning, like whether or not you are fine with being a learner. Thank you. So the next one, maybe just quickly to look at, is the coin model. Are we still online? We okay? Yeah. The coin model of privilege and oppression, I think, is a good one to always remind ourselves, because it means that we don't just do this, these people are good, these people are bad, the binaries, these people are straight, these people are queer, these people are, we're always doing all of these binary kind of things that separate us. So what we try to do is break that down a little more and say, where are our intersectional privileges and oppressions as human beings? My particular set might be different from your particular set. And how do we then negotiate the different levels of power? And we always remember that this intersectionality work came from the extraordinary early work of social movements, both in Asia, but also in the African-American or Black feminist women's movements. So they came because people were trying to be really clear about where power sits within our identities, within our bodies, within our who we are as human beings, and then to negotiate in a much more a nuanced and subtle way. We're more likely to get where we need to go if we do that. So the last bit, I think, about kind of, reminding us of who we are and where we are is this ambition that we have to have for changing, for repairing the damage that we've done to ourselves. There's three things I always point out. It's damage to ourselves. It's damage to other species, 200 species a day going extinct. And one of the key statistics that's coming out from scientists in the IPCC is that by 2050, it's likely that we will have wiped out as humans 1 million species of animals. That's between 30 to 50% of all the species on Earth. So if we know that, then we have to be clear that our responsibility now as humans is to bring down those emissions, not to trade it, not to make all these fancy deals. That's why many of us are going to the Conference of the Parties at UNFCCC. That's why we do this work on ecological justice. It's why we connect it to the economic system, to what capitalism is doing in this world. All of these issues are about us saying, if we don't stick to our trajectory of ambition, that we won't warm this world more than 1.5 degrees, then we're going to be in even worse trouble than we are right now. We've already hit 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. That's a terrifying statistic. So one of the things that we have to do is to really be very clear when we act. This is not about small areas of reform. It's not about doing the same but a little bit better. These are very large shifts and changes that we're asking of ourselves and of all of those carbon polluters in the world that are doing the most damage. 50% of the carbon emissions in the world comes from the G7 and G20 countries. So when we know that, then we have to be clear that those are the ones that we target. Yeah. So what we have to do, obviously, is we have to have better thinking, and that means being really deliberate about the way that we do that. So there are 4 things that we always say every time we have a free school. The first is bodily autonomy. You have to be able to make decisions and to have people respect those decisions in order for you to make change. That's the first thing. The second thing is be really clear about your different identities and about your powers and privileges. So really simple. And then the third is inclusivity, which is don't just walk through the world going, I like these people that are just like me. Think about how you are going to do your own work of inclusion so that we can make sure that human rights really means that everyone is accommodated and able to live their lives. And then the last one is being sure about interlinkage. If we stay in our own lane and we're siloed like this and we only look at our set of work, I only work on media, I only work on fisheries, I only work with women and girls. If that's what we do, then we stop ourselves from being able both to see the problem in all its deepness and wide and width, depth and width, but we also can't find the necessary solutions that are fast enough and deep enough. So I think that's really important as a fourth one. These are things that you can take into your own learning for lifelong learning, and that's why we spend so much time on it. In terms of better action, I think we've been very deliberate in the last 18 months, always to talk about material and structural change, right? Always to talk about how do we support each other when the times are really tough. We're experiencing loss and damage now throughout the world, but particularly there are parts of the world, including the Pacific, where it's even worse, and it's getting worse for certain communities. So we need both a crisis and mutual aid responses as well. Service provision and referrals, so that we have to be about direct action and activism. We have to have research and analysis. And today what we're talking about is only one part. And I wanted to show this slide because it shows you, no matter what we're doing, it's all connected. So the work that someone is doing in research can help us in our campaigns. The work that someone is doing on base building or organizing or mobilization, that also helps in the advocacy campaigns and the policy influence. So all of these things are very much connected. So I'm just going to skip through these slides. I'm not going to stop because you have all of these. And if you don't, please feel free. Look on the website, on the DIVA website, and the 10 tips for feminist organizing is up there. And you're very welcome to take it and use it and just say where it comes from. We always say, please acknowledge the tools and the resources where you get it from. So be clear why you're doing the activism. Build your politics of engagement from the very beginning. You know, be sure about power and control. When we use the word politics as feminists, we're not using it about political parties. We're talking about power and how you negotiate it. Use a praxis approach. Build what is your political will, you know, what you want to work for. Build that into the process and the structure. If DIVA, for instance, had a very, very corporate structure, it would be very hard for us to, in good faith, talk about the work that we do in communities. So we have to be clear on the method is incredibly important in the sets of work that we do. Build a set of concepts that make it easy to understand is number 5. Don't do everything in text. Make sure that you got lots of wonderful visuals. Human beings, we're storytellers. We love to have stories told to us in that way. I'm sorry, trying to get to number 6, not moving. Not moving. Okay. At minimum, try to make sure that you're using intersectionality and interlinkage frameworks. 7, pay attention to power. Pay very careful attention to power. Dig into the roots of it, because it will give you a lot of insights into where the work really is. Yeah, it can get exhausting to do that. Sometimes we just go, oh, I've had enough. I just want to go into this meeting and not look at how everybody is reacting with each other. But it's really important that we keep doing that. Understand the structure and processes of all of those places where you work. We always say, like, you know, if you have to know a thing in order to break it, in order to change it. So there's no point in going into the UN and going, oh, I'm just going to kind of go with what they say. No, because you're trying to influence the form of the thing as much as the content. Yeah, hang on. This is a big tip, scrub it off, because all of us have moments where we're hurting ourselves and each other. All of us have elements of the patriarchy. It's a system we live in, and don't accept it in others. Yeah. and build both your individual and your group praxis every day. But that's a lifelong process, and we'll talk more about that. And that's part of why you're in this room today, is because you're doing your own praxis just as I and everybody else are.